So like I said, I'm kind of a let's get started person. I would like my cohorts and friends to introduce themselves. And then, while they're doing that, as I've been thinking about this, and I haven't asked you two about it, but I would like you, are y'all married? Okay. I want you to identify one personality trait of your spouse that you admire. Okay? And then I want you to show
I'm
them. So
leaving.
you're
It's
going
my
to introduce
spouse.
yourself. This is
Everybody
your
else is on their own.
lucky
What you
day.
say
It
may
is.
continue.
Yeah, I
So what I want you to do-
motivated, I'm leaving.
After they introduce themselves, and you can say something about your spouse. I'll start with myself. Then I want you to say something about your spouse that you admire. And actually, the Spirit taught me this earlier this morning, so I'm still trying to figure out what's his purpose, Heavenly Father. But there is one. He's given me ideas on it, so that's where we are. So I'm Angie Johnson. I'm actually from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and my husband, the thing that I admire about him is he really is fearless. He's a free spirit, so he doesn't know no very well, and he's fearless because of it. And that has benefited my life greatly. So
Okay, so I'm up.
you are.
Great.
Good man.
I'll be very brief so we can get to the discussion, but I'm Michael Gregory, and I actually am in the Salt Lake City chapter, so I'm just local. I didn't have to make the miles and miles travel. And I've been involved with BYU Management Society for a number of years. I was a chapter president, I've been a chapter treasurer, I've been on programs, just done a wealth of things, and now I'm on the Global Steering Committee. So just to give you a little bit of my background. Professionally, I'm a CPA and work for the LDS Church in their for-profit entities as their treasurer. So like KSL TV and radio, if you've heard those things, if you're in this area, that's part of the group that I work with. And the thing about my wife that I really admire is she is a teacher's teacher. Now, I have to explain that. My wife, we have 6 children, and we own a preschool. She owns a preschool. I just kind of do the books for it. But, she basically just donates her time to make a difference in the lives of little people and become really teachers of others, parents and leaders. And she has this love for teaching and teaching others, and I just really admire that about her.
Thanks. I'm Claudia Walters. I have been the president of the, what was then the Arizona chapter. We now have 3.5 chapters in Arizona. Tucson's organizing one. I'm on the Global Steering Committee, and I am responsible for the chapters that are in Southern California and the Southwest, but not Texas. I guess you guys are a whole other country. And this is the last day that I can tell you that I am the CEO of Mesa United Way, because my successor is taking over tomorrow. I am retiring, and we're an organization that serves the poor and needy in our community. We raise funds for other nonprofits as well as doing programs ourselves, and we've existed for 95 years in Mesa, Arizona.
But she was not the president all of that time.
No, only 94 of those years. As my kids would say, I have an autographed copy of the Bible. I was going to say the thing that my husband's sitting right here. I was going to say the thing I admire most about him is that he puts up with me, which is really amazing. But I really admire that he sets goals and he achieves them. And I set goals to exercise and I let that slide. And he doesn't do that. He actually achieves goals, and that's really impressive to me.
I'm Mr. Claudia Walters. First name is Steve. I graduated from BYU in the business school, so before it was the Marriott School, so that ages me a little bit. I'm in the student loan business. I'm a CPA by accident. It didn't really happen that way. I've never practiced, but I've gotten that. And I started with Intel many years ago and have been through finance and multiple places, and I currently work with student loan business. And like growth businesses, and that's kind of where I cut my teeth with Intel and other places, so that's good. The thing that I admire most about Claudia is that she has a vision for making the communities in which we live better, and so and is willing to say yes to whatever that takes. She was on PTO and PTO president with the schools, and then on the school board, and then in city government, and most recently with Macy United Way, and served on other boards and places that deal with children's and women's issues. And so she's really got a vision for those kinds of things, and is a community activist in those kinds of areas in a very positive way. And that, saying yes to those kinds of things and being, watching that grow, and the impact she's had has been pretty remarkable.
My name is Tim Herrera. I'm right from this beautiful valley right here. I've been in the real estate industry for 30-plus years. I can relate with Michael. It's interesting. I admire patience in my wife. She's a preschool teacher. And just now am I catching a vision of why she does it, because she certainly doesn't make a lot of money. But now we go to a public function, a parade or whatever, and she has these teenagers run up to her and give her a big hug. You were my preschool teacher when I was 4 years old. You were my preschool teacher when I was 3 years old. I understand now why she does it.
Oh, I guess, okay. I'm Jamie Hall. I'm actually just a guest, so, I'm a mom right now. I'm expecting our third in November on Thanksgiving Day. I hope she doesn't come on Thanksgiving Day, but just goes a little bit before, a little after. What I really admire about my husband is that he is really kind, and he's also very hardworking as well. I think his kindness, it expounds over people that he meets and the people that he works with and the way he serves others. And then also, I think most importantly, as a dad, he's a very, very kind father and very patient, so, which I really appreciate, since he balances us out a little bit, so.
Thank you. So this is my wonderful wife, Jamie. I'm Tyler, and we're from St. George, and I'm glad to be here. I'm also a CPA, so I see a lot of commonalities in this group. It's kind of fun. The other fun thing is, I was thinking about Jamie, and the thing I thought of her that I admire the most is she is kind. So that's funny, she chose the same trait. But ever since I met Jamie, she was always just watching out for other people and wanted them to feel comfortable and not put anyone out.
I'm Reese Knighting from Las Vegas. I'm a financial advisor with Merrill Lynch, and my wife, she makes other people feel good about themselves. Every time she meets somebody, she's showing interest, asking questions about them, and just by the end of the conversation, making them feel good about themselves. So I love to bring her along, and whenever we meet people, I know that she'll do a good job and making a good impression, so that's it.
I'm Elder Ray Duffin. We're on a mission currently at Rexburg, Idaho. We're from Sandy, Utah. Our job up there is to find internships across the country for the students up there, because this next year there'll be 20,000 full-time students at BYUI, 10,000 off-track students, and 60,000 online and pathway students. Okay, that's how fast this thing has happened up there.
Exponentially.
And each student now has to have an internship to graduate from BYUI. It's part of the curriculum now. They have to have one. And so we teach on that. So that's what we do. My wife has a lot of characteristics that are fantastic, but if I put them into one, hers is charity. She's the epitome of charity.
Did you hear what we were doing?
You're talking about a spouse? Yes.
Okay, so we're introducing ourselves, and we share one trait about our spouse that we admire.
Okay. My name is Tirindam Sukpatra. I'm from Mongolia. I just moved here 2 months ago to get my MBA in UVU. Not married. But my undergrad was in BYU, Hawaii. So I'm an executive committee member in Mongolian chapter. We established the Mongolian chapter 4 years ago. So my wife, she's my kindergarten friend actually, and she gives me wonderful, wise advices all the time. When I make it's very hard to make right decisions all the time, and then she just comes found time to like do this, and she gives some wise words and like, oh, dang, that's it. Yes, receives the answer all the time.
Awesome, that's
By the
great.
way, I'm from the University of Utah, so anybody wanna
We like you anyway. Angie,
think
may I,
about that?
may I do those two things that we talked about doing up front? Is that okay?
Yes, can I point something out first?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so now I know why I was directed to do this by the Spirit, because it really was the Spirit, it's not me. First of all, ask yourself, how did you feel when you were talking about your spouse? It's a feel good, right? Because you're immediately seeing something about them you admire. And how would they feel if they heard it?
Yeah, I feel good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right? Okay, so when you think about growing your boards, it really is about relationships. And if we toot our own horn too much, sometimes that stifles the energy. Just think about that. And I just thought that was an interesting thing that came to my mind as I've been pondering on how we're supposed to help you. Because sometimes I don't feel like I have any answers. In fact, most of the time, I don't think I have any answers. I just have lots of questions. And I'm watching everybody else trying to figure out the answers. But I know Heavenly Father wants to direct this work. I do know that. And if we're listening, He's going to teach us things to do. And think about expanding your membership. Think about getting to know each other. But you've got to, we got to know you better through your spouse. Just now. Interesting experience. So, Claudia, go for it.
Thank you. We are not here as experts. We are here as more like facilitators than experts. But we have been to a number of conferences, and one of the things that I came away with the first time was, oh good heavens, we aren't doing anything right. I listened to certain chapters who were just phenomenal, and I thought we're just failing on every front. But one of the things that we talked about in the planning committee as we were preparing for this was that we wanted chapters to recognize that every single chapter has its own mission and vision underneath that big mission and vision. You may look entirely different than the chapter in Prescott, Arizona, which is a phenomenally successful chapter, and they do one thing, and they do it really well. They get kids to go to college or back to college. They gave out over $20,000 in scholarships this last year. They are a tiny chapter. They have tons of pathway students, and they had their very first person finish 4-year degree. Now, that looks nothing like the Salt Lake chapter, and yet Prescott is successful and Salt Lake is successful. So if you walk away from here and think, man, they just told us we're a bunch of losers and idiots in our chapter, then you got the wrong message. That is not the message. The message is figure out what your chapter is supposed to be doing. And I absolutely agree. That's a through the Spirit kind of a thing. The second thing is, the last time we had conversations about boards, and some people call them committees and advisory committees and all that stuff, it turned out we got lost because people had different definitions. They used the same words and they meant different things. So when we're talking about it, we need to make sure we have we know what we're talking about. So I'm just gonna write up here, the BYU, it doesn't matter what you use what works in your area, but an advisory council is what? Do you know what the BYU Management Society generally definition of an advisory council is?
Or board.
Some people call it an advisory council, some people call it an advisory board. So what might that be? What would that look like? Anybody know? Wanna try?
Yeah, shoot an idea out.
Like people with recognizable names in the area.
Okay.
Bingo.
So these might be, I'm gonna call them C-suiters. They may not even come to your monthly meetings.
I may even be a member of the chapter.
They may not be a member of the chapter.
I mean, I can think of
But these are people who can connect you to the community
kind of
in
your
ways.
movers and shakers, is that?
They're movers, okay, movers, shakers. And in the case of, I will tell you, our advisory council in the Phoenix East chapter meets one time a year. We buy them breakfast. They say, that's it? I only have to come one time a year? I get to have breakfast? You're buying it for me? I'm in! So we have mayors, we have people who are, you know, heads of big companies, and they come and then they sit there and they talk and we tell them we need an hour and a half of your time. They generally don't leave at the end of an hour and a half because they're having a lot of fun talking to each other, because a lot of them know each other, but they don't get to see each other in that kind of a social setting. And they almost always walk away telling us, oh, I can help with that, or I can get that speaker. Or we look at them and say, wow, that's a really interesting topic that you're really good at talking about. And they, oh, okay, I'll come and talk about it. One time a year, that's it, that's what we do. Okay, so advisory council, so when you're talking about that, let's try and use that word or something like it. Then you have what some people call an executive committee. What do you call it, Angie?
We call it an executive board, but after listening to Kevin Rollins,
Executive
I loved his
board.
executive operational board. They're the duos.
Okay, executive operational board. I heard somebody else call it something else. So you all have, does anybody else have a different name that they use for that?
We have executive council.
Executive council,
Like it referred to.
okay. So this is
I've heard that.
This is like president, president-elect, all of that stuff. And I will tell you from my experience right here, that the biggest issue that we have in keeping chapters successful is that, right there,
Succession
right there.
kind of planning.
Succession planning. So I just wanted to get that out on the table before we have the discussion. So back, Angie, I'm throwing it back your way.
Okay, so, like I said, I have more questions than answers. So I have questions. And there's questions that I think we can come up with answers. So these are the questions I've come up with. We've established what well, let's ask this. What is the purpose, in your mind, of your executive board? We've kind of talked about that, your executive committee, board, council.
And actually, yeah, you'd have here, and then you go this, just so we know, there could be the board, which these are part of, and then there might be committees of the board.
Subcommittees.
Does that make sense to kind of just thinking of not that I'm trying to draw
Org chart.
org chart.
No, but I think you ought to write that underneath, put a
So-
dash somewhere underneath there.
So we could have board, and then we could have committees, and the committees have assignments. Just so, does that?
No, that's
everybody-
important to say, because some really large chapters have an executive committee and then a board under the
Right.
executive committee. And then they have committees under that. We don't have that in Phoenix. You don't have to do it this way, and the smaller you are, probably the less you have of
Yeah.
that.
And in Dallas-Fort Worth, Dallas was the chapter, and it split into 3 chapters about 4 years ago. And so you have these 2 smaller chapters trying to figure out how to become a bigger chapter again. So it's a growth plan. And that's kind of, I think what you need to look at your executive boards as is, you wanna grow these. Cause once you start getting people, if they have a job, what happens when you have a calling in church? You show them to do it, right? It's kind of the same thing with this. We are starting committees now. We now have our first committee. We're really excited in Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we have one of the guys here. He's like, can I come? We said, yeah, sure, come. He's super excited. He's not on the executive board, he's on the committee. So committees expand your network of people, which, you know, do you remember, what is that, the bubble gum commercial? Do you remember that bubble gum commercial, or it was a hair shampoo commercial where I use it and then it doubled and I use it? Do you know, have any of you ever seen this? I'm old, so it's an old commercial. So anyway, the whole premise behind it was, you know, I shared it with my friend, I told my friend about it, and they told their friend, and it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. So really, what I'm hearing from a lot of people, tell me if this is true, you wanna grow, you wanna expand your membership, right? And you wanna figure out how to do it. And you probably feel like, you know, you've tried all these different things and it doesn't seem to be growing. But giving people something to do helps. Having them become involved, giving them a purpose. People need to have a purpose. So think about that as you set these things up. You know, how do you wanna have subcommittees? Have a purpose. Okay, so what is the purpose of your executive committee? Anybody? What is the purpose? What's happening in yours? Anybody?
Planning.
Planning, okay. That's it?
Organizing events.
Organizing?
like to do.
So the planning, the organizing,
Leadership,
leadership, define what do you mean by leadership?
well, establish the vision or the mission for the chapter, and then carrying out that vision.
Okay, and that can change
It
based
can.
on the leadership.
That basically, you're right.
Okay, what else? What's the purpose of this? How do you see this function?
Like set goals, delegate, and then, follow up.
Good, and I like that you added follow-up, because that seems to be, I don't know, every board has that person that says, I'm gonna go do this, and that's 6 months later, they still haven't done it.
Well, I'm not, I mean, I've watched it go with her, but it seems to me, she was an evangelist to try and make sure that as part of who she was inviting people. And that, we've dealt with this as an internal item, that to me is an external piece, and I don't know if that's the right place for it, but it seems to me that when was it Greg was talking about finding the people who are excited and love you, if you don't love yourself and you can go out and be that one, it seems to me evangelizing, is that part, I don't know, I'm asking the question, is that part of the executive committee?
Yes.
Board people,
Yes.
and maybe evangelism isn't the right word.
No, I think that's actually the perfect word. I've heard it used as, they're your missionary force. They go
Or
out and ask
cheerleader.
people, or your
That was the word
cheerleader.
that was used last night at the dinner.
Uh-huh, or cheerleader. I'm gonna use a story from
Chief
our
Excitement
area.
Officer, wasn't it? Was what-
Yeah, yeah.
Chief Excitement Officer?
Chief Excitement Officer.
Oh.
Dallas,
CEO, yeah, Chief
Dallas's
Excitement
current
Officer.
president,
I like that. Catchy
is
term.
friends with a lot of the NAC members. I mean, these guys are these guys, right? And he went out to him, I had this conversation with him on a call, and he went out to him, and he said, why aren't you coming? You believe in this, why aren't you showing up for our events? He made a personal commitment to go out and be that invitee. And he says, you need to be involved. He committed them, and they came to the next, I know they came to the next activity, and I think some of them came to the next one. So I think that's a really important point. You gotta kind of blow your horn too.
You know, Angie, I don't know, I ran up here and wrote this because you know what you were saying. You were talking about having a friend, having a calling, and now we're talking about being nurtured by the good word. I mean, it felt a little President Hinckley to me as we're talking about, because I'm just gonna share with you something that happened to me. When I got asked to do this, I had been out of the Management Society for a while because I had a conflict between when my board met that I needed to report to and when the Management Society met. And so I got a call one day, and they had changed their meetings, and I got a call one day at my office, and they said, can we come, the person who was in charge said, can I come and meet with you? I said, I have a really bad week, I've only got 15 minutes. He said, I'll take that 15 minutes. And I hung up the phone, and I called Steve, and I said, Steve, they are coming to ask me to be president of the BYU Management Society. And he said, did they call you and tell you that? I said, no. But when I heard his voice on the phone, I had the same feeling as when I heard, the bishop's voice and knew I was about to be called to be the young women's president. I actually think we are called to these things. I don't know if any of you have had that spiritual experience, okay? But that spiritual, yep, it is a spiritual experience. There are things that we are officially called to, and then there are things that the Spirit calls us to. And I actually, if you listen to Dean Perry yesterday, this is more than a business calling. This is a church calling.
Mhm.
This is a calling from Heavenly Father to create better moral and ethical leadership.
It's your civic community calling. President Hinckley asked us several years ago, I'll tell you how mine started. I was in early morning ceremony, and President Hinckley came out and he said, you need to be involved in the community. And I thought, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but I'll do this, and I started praying about it. I had people approach me during this time, will you run for school board? Didn't feel right. Will you run for city councilman? Didn't feel right. I was too busy actually being the seminary teacher, and then I got released. And they had this fireside by the BYU Management Society. I'm like, who's that? I have a degree in horticulture. I don't have anything to do with Marriott School. It's from BYU, but it's in horticulture. I mean, I passed the building. I didn't go in it. And so I went to the fireside, and the Spirit said, this is where you need to be. And the president walked back. He's a friend of mine. He walked to the back and he said, I want you to be on the executive board. I feel, keyword, I feel like you need to be on our executive board. I said, okay. I showed up at the first meeting. I was so lost. I mean, they were lost too, because we were a new chapter. But within a year and a half, I became the president of that chapter. They wanted me sooner, and I said, you gotta give me some time to figure out what we're supposed to be doing here. And then I became the president of that chapter, and then from that, I was put on the global steering committee. I don't have a long history with BYU Management Society, but it's a calling.
And I would add a similar kind of with my story, that I'm actually a University of Utah alum. In this valley, that probably makes not a lot of sense. And why am I here? And on the BYU Management Society Global Steering Committee. I mean, if you kind of talk through that, there's a lot of disconnects.
Who do you
But-
cheer for in football?
I'll be over in the stadium this evening with my family.
He's purple.
But the reason I bring this up is that, you know, this networking and the friends, I had friends and associates at work, and our chapter was struggling with a particular assignment. And they actually came to me and said, Mike, you have these same values and these same standards that we're as part of this organization, and this is what we do. Would you come and help us solve a problem? Well, I was needed. My friends were there inviting me. And then as I became involved, you know, the feeling, it was so impactful. Normally, that's where it comes first, is that nurturing, and then we get involved. But mine was just out of the blue, a call. And now here we are, literally almost 20 years later, and I'm still involved. And because, again, the executive committee invited, it was that invitation, it was a personal touch.
What a great example, because you said the executive committee invited me. So the question I would ask of you is, have any of you invited somebody? Have you? What was the result?
They came and this one individual wants to be involved, and he's like, I know some people that could be great speakers and everything. So yeah, I think the more people you get to come and they kind of taste it and they meet people and they're like, oh, this is a good place to be. I need to be here, you know. And the more we can do that, the more it'll grow.
So what's your role on your executive committee right now?
So we have a board. We don't really call it an executive
Okay.
committee. We just call it a board. But so
Whatever you call
I've
it.
been the secretary, kind of just keeping notes and everything. But I'm the president-elect for next year.
So you're the president-elect. So when you think about this invitation piece, what will you go back and say to your board, you know, as you're reporting out on this? What are you gonna say to them?
About everything that we're talking about
Yeah.
here.
Mhm.
Well, I think forming a subcommittee, getting more people involved, like you're saying, finding needs, and I have a list of all these things that are ideas we want to do, different types of events and stuff, and I think reaching out, getting people involved, I think that's going to be key. Yeah, getting more people to be excited about it and feel like they're contributing.
I do too. I'm gonna give you a bad example, and it doesn't I don't want it to reflect badly on the person who asked me, because they didn't know either. But when I was first brought on to the board, they came to me and they said, we need you to join the BYU Management Society because we don't have women on the BYU Management Society, and that looks really bad. And this was around 2000. And they said, could you come? So, and be our women's chair. I said, okay. So I went, and I was the women's chair for like a year and a half. And I went to the first meeting, and they said, brethren, this is a lunch meeting, and the room was filled, and they said, brethren, would you all bow your heads so we can have a blessing on the food? And I thought, well, I guess I don't have to bow my head. Now, somebody said to me at our last, when we had about 100 people, because Senator Jeff Flake came and we filled the whole room, and somebody said, boy, I wish we'd had a better turnout of women. About 20% were women. It was a great turnout. But for a year and a half, I went. And I did nothing. I just went. Because I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And they didn't know what I was supposed to do. And now, and I learned, and I can tell you all the bad examples of things I did wrong, so how I didn't do this well. If I were getting somebody, I would go to them and I would give them one task to do. I would say, we need somebody to be in charge of putting together a women's meeting one time during this year. What month? So find a month that you think is a good month. You be in charge of it. Claudia, as the women's chair, will you be in charge of that, please? Heck yes, I can do that. One meeting out of the whole year? Yes, I can do it. And now I've got buy-in, and now I don't feel like a failure, because I can tell you, for a year and a half, I felt like a failure. By the time I was done, we had probably tripled, because there were now 3 women coming. And so, you know, I was a huge success, except I knew I was a failure, because I knew I had done nothing to do that. The task I had been given was too big and not comprehensible. So if I were going back, that's what I would say. Okay, Mike, I'm tossing the ball to you.
Well, I'm just gonna come back to here, you know, earlier this morning, we had some discussion about, you know, when we think about our membership and membership growth, really, we have a group of people that are all right here. Are they our most committed people generally? I'd almost say, is that probably true? And going back and saying, and asking them the question, so why are you here? You know, what are you getting out of this from the perspective that we heard earlier? Taking that group and expanding that and saying, well, then those are the things that we need to use, if you will, to go out and discuss with others. And I think that that's really, really powerful. One of the things that I've become convinced, this advisory board, I want to talk just a minute about that, the movers and shakers. Are any of you using an advisory board of any sort? How does that work for your groups?
So I wasn't on the board last year when they did it. They do it once a year. They do a dinner, and they have, I don't know how many people are on the board, but it's the movers and shakers, and you know, a lot of it is finding out who do they know that we could have speak. And I think that was the most of it, that they have their list of, here's all the connections they have, who do we want to have come speak. But I think we could use it better and try to connect with either other organizations or get like tours of their businesses, or try to leverage it even more. But I think for now it's just kind of trying to ask if either they can speak or people they know can speak. That's my understanding. But
Okay.
That works.
You raise your, and that's good, because they have probably a network that's different than my network would be.
Right.
And mine.
So, is that, okay.
Okay, they usually donate. And also,
So they have a little bit of the deep pocket.
yeah.
Okay.
And we don't meet annually, usually once in every few years. But they also help us to find another network for our like guest speakers. And also some of them come for the business plan competition as judge.
Oh,
So
good.
we do like we do have like annual business plan competition. They usually advise their board to judge. So and then they make decisions. Okay, this business plan is cool. Professionals.
Great.
If they want, they can. It's up to them. So
That's great.
That is great.
Tim, how are you?
I misunderstood your question. I'm not aware of an advisory council. We do have an executive committee, and thought that was what you.
Okay, I'm sorry,
beg your
yeah, I
pardon.
probably pointed here and, yeah.
I beg your pardon.
No. Let me just describe something that I've observed in my time with the Salt Lake chapter. And again, it's ideas, and you have to remember, going back to what Claudia had said, they function differently than perhaps some other chapters in ways. But Gail Miller was a member of the advisory council.
Do you know who Gail Miller is?
Yeah.
Gail
Yeah,
Miller, the
Larry.
Miller family, the owners of the Utah Jazz, I mean, they're a big deal in Utah. And she has opened up avenues that are phenomenal for us, that we would never be able to touch, including people like Dave Checkett, I mean, people that aren't even in this area, in ways that are kind of phenomenal. You know, thinking of Tim and being right here, we've developed a relationship with Brad Eagle. And Mary Ann, who spoke to us last night, came and spoke to our chapter. And he has all these contacts across the US, and often we'll partner with him because he's bringing them here as a guest lecturer. And so I just use that from thinking of your universities that you might have in your area that you could get connected with. And when they're bringing in guest speakers, we leverage off of that, and these phenomenal professors or other successful businessmen we'll say, oh, you're bringing them here? Yeah, we would love if, can we make this a 2-day trip for them? Those things have made a phenomenal difference, because then people see this kind of who's who is coming, and it drives membership. It drives attendance. And these are people that we would never be able to find on our own or reach. And so that's one of the reasons that the advisory council that I've observed. And those are not always easy contacts, but, and I'll use Gail Miller as an example. The Millers have a family foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the purposes of the family foundation, we learned, was to help give scholarships. We also learned that the Millers help their employees' children go to school. So what does that tell us about the Millers? Well, they have a real drive about education. And so we thought, this is an easy touch to ask Gail to be part of us, because we have a similar mission and values. And so we just went to her and said, this is what we're about. How can we kind of work together? She goes, I'd love to. And so I just use that as an example of a way that you might think, I don't know how to, in your communities, how you would reach some of those people, but if you find similar kinds of things that they're doing to you, all of a sudden it's easy to attach them in with you and have, like you described, them open up their Rolodexes in my terms.
What questions do you guys have that we have not answered or talked about in here? What did you come in here to get, and we haven't even touched on
I
it?
should have started with that, shouldn't we, to make sure that we did.
Let me say one other thing on this advisory council that we have. I had to reconstitute it because we had people who had kind of fallen by the wayside. Some of the people who had fallen by the wayside were former chapter presidents who frankly had kind of burned out, but they still absolutely loved the chapter. Their careers had taken them someplace, and so we brought them back on the advisory council as well. And they also become a resource when you're looking to add people to your executive committee. You might say to them, do you have somebody that you work with? Do you have somebody that you know? Sometimes it's one of their kids who's now, in business and doing something, and so you can bring in some younger people into it. The other thing that the Phoenix East chapter started a few years ago is in the summertime, we don't do regular meetings. We go out to sites to visit places. Honey, what was NXPI called before the name?
Oh, it was on semiconductor, was it on? No?
No, it was a Motorola spinoff. I can't think of the name of it. But we go to companies in the area, and we will pick premier companies, like their industry leaders, segment leaders, something like that. And I'll admit, we're in the Phoenix area, so we have some. But you probably have some who are segment leaders in your community, whatever your community is. You probably have a leading CPA firm. And so we say to them, we want to come and bring our management society people to see your business. Who doesn't want to talk about their business? Everybody wants to talk about their business except Intel, which will not let you in, by the way. Sorry, we're secret. You can't come in. We can't tell you what we do here. So if you want Intel, they have to come out and speak to you. You can't come in the building. But the NXPI, whatever they used to be, we looked through and saw who did we know, that list, that computer list. We went and looked at it. Oh, we got those 3 people who graduated from the Marriott School. Emailed them, hey guys, we'd really like to come and visit. And guess what?
Freescale.
What was it?
Freescale.
Freescale, thank you, Freescale.
I had to look it up. I Googled it.
Freescale. So the guy who's the vice
I'm
president there.
disappointed you didn't use your Rolodex.
That's right.
That's right.
The guy at Freescale had graduated from the Marriott School. So we reached out to him through somebody else, a little lower level contact, and we said, we would love if you would speak. We would like to come there. Usually we have, somewhere, you tell us how many people can come, and you provide breakfast or lunch. You tell us which it's going to be. In other words, it costs us nothing. It costs our members nothing. We don't make them pay for it. We say, you tell us how many people can come. Most places tell us somewhere between 30 and 60. They'll say you can bring. And they tell us if it's breakfast or lunch. And we always throw in there, if you don't want to do that, we can just bring bagels and juice. Oh no, we've got it covered. We've only had one who said, yeah, you guys bring it. And then they say afterwards, why didn't we know? We would have done it. So people are usually willing. And Freescale said to us, would it be okay if we held it in our cafeteria and invited our employees to come as well? We said, we would love that. We got to get up, tell them, welcome to a BYU Management Society meeting. We had over 200 people at the meeting, most of whom were Freescale employees, many of whom were not members of the church. They got to hear about what we did as BYU Management Society. And the other thing we did was we use it to plug paid membership, because limited seats, usually, like I said, it's usually somewhere between 30 and 60. And we say, we only have this many seats. We sent this email to you first because you are a dues-paying member of the Management Society. And so register right now. We're sending it out to everybody else in 2 days. So right now, get on and do it. Usually half of the seats are gone before it's open to anybody else. And how do we get into some of those companies? Those people. Because we say to them, do you know somebody at whatever? Yeah.
So Claudia, when you were at that business, did you take your membership form because you knew employees were going to be joining you and say, if you're interested in receiving more information, just fill this out?
I now feel like an idiot. No, we didn't even think to do that.
I mean,
oh my gosh, that would have been so good.
But, you know, that's where thinking, and you just go,
Yeah.
oh, we could have.
Yeah, we should have done that.
Picked up another 10 or 15, at least contacts that, yeah, we need to know
Yeah.
more about you, and we're interested in when you're gonna be holding your next event. Anyway, I just.
That
I thought
is
you actually
such a
probably
good
did that.
idea. That is such a good idea. I wish I thought, we'll do it next.
Membership drive.
Yeah.
just in your
So
activities.
I'm gonna suggest, when I go back to my chapter, so I just learned something. So when I go back to
Sorry,
my
buddy.
chapter, no, it's such a great idea. But we need to do it. The other thing we say at every meeting, you do not need to have gone to the Marriott School, you do not need to have graduated from BYU, you do not need to be a member of the LDS Church, you just have to share a vision of moral and ethical leadership.
Okay, to sum everything up, thank you. I have, aren't they great?
Yeah.
What the final thing, I'm just gonna tell you what I got out of this, really, is that this is basically what we've talked about all weekend. We're developing relationships. We may not have the relationship that they have, but they have it. But if we develop the relationship with them, they have other relationships to help us. And really, isn't that what it's all about, is developing relationships? And as you said, your wise wife gave you the wisest counsel. I thought that was interesting, because we're gonna get wise counsel here. You're gonna get wise counsel here. You're gonna get wise counsel here. Just keep your ears open and listen to the Spirit, because I really believe that the Spirit is driving this. In fact, I'm convinced, absolutely convinced.
Absolutely.
So, listen to the Spirit, and you'll go directions.
Right.
You just have to follow. It's like Nephi, you know? He really didn't know a lot of times what he was doing, but he learned to listen to the Spirit. And I just think that that's what we need to do, is listen to the Spirit. And we'll be driven
460.
respectively in our different areas where we need to go.